Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here in this new series of sharings, Deadman Walking, Freedom Never Dies, 11 life lessons in facing death. Today, the third installment. The first two lessons, processes in evolution, creative evolution, bringing God, your God, into the room, into one's heart, into one's soul, into one's voice, into one's movement, into one's entirety. I use the word God to refer to the qualities of heart and consciousness that I consider sacred and holy, profoundly beautiful, intimate, transformational, larger than the human form, but not excluding the nature of nature. The second lesson, grace under pressure. Life itself, a lot of the time, is highly pressured to be challenged by love or rejection or loss, illness, disease, separation from those one wants to be near and loves, calamity, torture, crimes against humanity, disease, diagnoses of illness, of death, grace. Grace under the pressure of the shock of life as we know it being interrupted. We all know it. And that quality, that very complicated, beautiful, intimate quality of grace, the mother holding the child, our God holding the earth, a world that includes sin and redemption and embraces something even deeper, the existential empathy of the very process of being, call it bringing God into the room, bringing the holy into our soul, bringing the radiance of our Dhamma, Dharma, truth to the forefront of our senses, and defining our relationships based upon our love of the holy, our love of transformational beauty, our love of purity and restraint, principled life. And today, I sat this morning and pondered and thought about what I felt and what would be valuable for me personally to present. And it comes back today to this theme stream of the quality of consciousness. The quality of consciousness as the basis of being engaged with the shock of a terminal illness, a disease, and feeling into that mind-heart stream called consciousness. And mindfully, as best as possible, teasing out of it both the misinformation, the habit patterns, the conformity to denigrating psychological, emotional structures that may not be so aware of, where we feel fear. And to tease out of that theme, consciousness, heart, mind stream, the radiance of freedom. I said yesterday, simply put, that there is a freedom that only we can give ourselves. And so the sole essence for me of the stream of the quality of consciousness is how well do I release fear and how well do I embrace and elevate and co-create the freedom that I can only give myself. I can't take this diagnosis out of my heart. I can't take biology out of biology, but I can take the fear out of consciousness and correlate with the inevitables of anicca, impermanence. Every living thing, that's important for me to say it and maybe for you to feel it as well, to just take a moment, a meditative moment here together across time and space, to feel the nature of true nature. Everything that we are and know and come to terms with is impermanent, subject to intimate, immediate transformational change on a nanosecond level, second after second. Every breath, every molecule of thought, every photon of light refracted through infinity that gives us perceptions through time and space on this little fragile blue-green sphere, every molecule of water, every embryo, every child, every bird, every thought, every dream, every breath, everything there is that's ever been, that ever will be, is in this infinite tapestry of impermanence. And yesterday I mentioned this impermanence for me. When I feel into it, it takes instantly the fear out of the stream of consciousness that somehow something is going wrong based upon the interruption of life reflected back to me through medical professionals and high scientific technological information, that you are now in a process of dying. And it's like so beautiful to know, okay, I've been given a reflective gift back to me to reflect the reality of something that's always been there, that will always be there for all beings in all ways at all times. Everything is impermanent. What did you expect? I said that on the first day. What did you expect now that you've been told you have an acutely enlarged ascending aortic aneurysm that could burst at any second and will, even with something as natural as a cough or a sneeze or stress or an aberrant sound, the triggers of life, right? Look at how fragile and at the same time how strong we are. Impermanence. The Buddha talked about heavenly messengers, and these have been very actively spoken about by many people over the centuries. The Buddha was said to have left his home with his friend, and they went outside of their normal comfort zones and traveled, and they encountered an old man, and it said that the young Gautama had never seen someone old. He had been somewhat sheltered in his way of living, which is not uncommon for all of us, to have very specific categories and bandwidths of experience. And it's said in this very poignant teaching attributed to the Buddha that they stopped and that they looked into the heart and eyes of this elder who was said to have been bent over and eyes deeply sunk into his head, and without sandals and ragged clothes, gave the appearance of both old and somewhat of a person not with high means, and nearing death. And the Buddha was said to have asked his friend, "What is this condition?" And he said, this is the natural evolution of the human form, all forms. It changes, it becomes old, it becomes bent over. And life is infinitely different than at youth or at middle age. And it's said that right there in the theme stream, the quality of the young man's consciousness, the quality of consciousness, a priority. This is another point today for me, is how this diagnosis has really highlighted my priorities. And it's not just some categorical table of contents on the book that I've lived or the book that I'll continue living of my life. But it may be found in the word, what really matters to you? And do you have the courage, Alan, to hear those heightened, more intimate priorities? And not be moved only by the previous conditions and patterns of more abject suffering, addictions that you couldn't get your head and heart around. And you needed the sanctity of a meditation center, a teacher, to take you in as a young child of the Dhamma, to anoint you with the sacredness of restraint and the inspiration to see other women and men, nuns and monks, live the sacred life. No. But right now you have to prioritize yourself, and you've been given this wicked, terrorizing, sacred gift of the prediction, the diagnoses, a medical condition known with the immediacy of a strike of lightning and you will die, without a highly dangerous operation, which you could die. It's a rock in a mountain. And that moment where the Buddha was said to have seen this older person, and a few seconds later they're moving down the road and they see someone who is diseased. I can't even imagine if we had 5 and 6 dimensional spaces between us and we had a high degree of psychedelic that we shared and just inhaled for a moment the reality of this sonic creation between us, that we could see an older person, a diseased individual, and simultaneously right next to that was a dead body, a corpse, all together right there. And what that would do to interrupt, I don't say interrupt normalcy or habits, or I'm trying to shame you that the life that you have or that you perceive, or even the life that I have and perceive about myself and somehow is wrong. But sometimes the lightning bolt of reality snaps us out of a semi-coma of conditioning and the prediction and the anticipation of tomorrow, next month, love and babies and beautiful ceremonies and post-pandemic life is somewhat both questioned and perhaps even shattered and deeply interrupted. The prioritization of the quality within consciousness of what really matters. That's something that goes through my mind now almost every day. How easy it is to live in the comfort, conformity, conditioning of normalcy. And it's already kind of unusual and avant-garde. But what really, if you could co-create for the next 6 months the optimal environment for your heart, your body, your mind? Do you ever give yourself that splendid gift of the ultimate existential, mystical nest, that play field studio of unthinkable creative exploration of dynamics within the stream of consciousness, not yet felt and known at the level of clarity that you would really like? What is it that you haven't yet felt, experienced, or known at the level of clarity that you would like to be defining your integrity of direct experience? Time is short. Priorities radically open the heart and the mind to that place of sacred communion with the best dreams that we have the courage to give ourselves. Walking the heart back to the intimacy of not just the moment, but the deeper felt questioning of the proclivities of my choices and habits. Are they appropriate, or should I change the way I live, how I relate, who I associate with, in fact, how I think? How can I evolve that stream of consciousness and bring within it, bring God into that room with grace to deal with the complexities of coming to more intimate terms with anicca, impermanence, the fidelity of the breath, the fidelity of a movement, the artistry of relaxing fear, and the grace of elevating the heavenly qualities, the heavenly messengers of old age, disease, and death, and equally their counterparts. When I think of prioritizing, as I am right now, my life, it's about how well can I give myself the finest smile of possibility, of anointing the day, the week, if I'm so lucky, with the best creation. I'm so right now into the artist studio of my heart. I fear being judged for being so hyper OCD with detail. But those of you who are yogis and meditators and Dharma artists, and artists without the Dharma, artists purely because you are in the flow of artistry, details. The devil is in the details. The heavenly messenger is in the details. I've been listening to interviews and watching documentary films over the last few months, especially the last month, even more so the last few days, of some of the great artists and how they share, how they create their songs, their art, their studios, their styles, their choice of love making on paint, on sound, on poetry. And there's something so divine about infusing creative timelessness in that stream of consciousness, that flow state. Challenge drudgery, stay light and nimble. Qualities of artistry and style, increase vibrancy. Low dose, medium dose, high dose, post dose, psychedelicize the tantrification of consciousness on the palette of your presence. Make real the priority in real-time experience. Not to just save the thought as a priority, but manifest. How will I kiss for the first time? How well will I love for the first time? If we were on the finest death precipice, the finest, purest form of acid, the most divine moment of love, right there we would want timelessness to be what defined that experience. When I think of the old age, the diseased, and the death, it brings me right up close to the question, not fear, fear of death. Fear of death, it's so overrated to keep death over your shoulder. Get it off your back. It's really there as I can see it as, I got it, got it, got it. You can go now, Mr. Death, and just take your little need to whip me over the back with your sadistic kind of spiritual semi-propaganda, but I'd rather I got it. I got your message. I'm going to live in heightened radiance, and it's not because I'm going to die. It's because I've tuned in to heightened quality of being. That aesthetic. I like the sound of the music and the poetry and the love of my own mind on the palette of shared space. What will you create? It's not just living in states of consciousness. I'm really down with manifesting. If you could just see the notes that I keep and the thoughts that I watch in my own head and bring, I know you do the same thing, but so much of my days right now are about not just feeling and walking from here to there and doing it well and thinking well and listening to music well and doing yoga well and meditating well and watching my breath well. It's the manifestation into outcomes. I don't write just to write. I write for the outcome of a children's book or a set of thoughts, a film. Really get down into the little details of manifesting priorities in form. Because we've been diagnosed with a fatal illness doesn't mean that we can't, okay, it's all over. We start to manifest even more because there's something beautiful in that manifestation. Give yourself the gift of form, creating textures, environments where you can hear yourself. That's so crucial. When I think of the Buddha on that journey that day with those heavenly messengers, there was something in the way he was living that he wasn't really listening to himself in the way that you probably listen to yourself, or I'm listening to myself. How well do you listen? What do you hear? And what will you do with the information that you're bringing into your soul sense? And how will you manifest that information in form? Living is an event, a production, a spoken event through form into existence. And that artistry, that quality, that beauty, take death out of living. I think that in a nutshell. In times of crisis, it brings out the best in some people, or it brings out the worst in you. Dedicate yourself, no matter what you've been telling yourself about how the future is yours. Take future out of the equation. This is how I talk to myself. And bring quality of engagement to the forefront of everything you do. How well do you do it? And a lot of that how wellness is boundaries, appropriateness, skillfulness, determination, restraint. Knowing what not to do is a super rad behavior and an intelligence right there alone. The heavenly messengers of the Buddha was, I think the way in which I've been living is not the way that I want to live now. That means stopping certain styles of thinking and communication and occupation through form, and having the bravery, the guts, the ethical, spiritual, mindful intelligence to decathex, to unconform from those historical now patterns that no longer serve. Write them down. Patterns that no longer serve. Priorities, qualities of consciousness, bringing God into the room, grace under pressure, these first three lessons. What will you do with the preciousness of your presence? and being willing to not follow through with anything that you don't feel that you want to do. And just simply say, that is not something I want to do. Interrupt the flow to increase the quality of one's own heart and mind. You can't speak enough about Sangha. I know many of us use that word and have used it. You don't know what you don't have until you realize, at least in my case, that you might not have much time to live. It goes like, priority isn't just about self for me, in other words. It's highlighted the word Sangha. And I've used this so often. I'm not glib about it, but now that the future is radically unknown, and I do firmly feel the truism that life is an interdependent, relational event. I know these are very obvious words that point to intimate mutuality. The South African term Ubuntu. I am who I am through you. Or denigrate you with the emotionality of Ubuntu, I feel is something that denigrates me. The radicalization of a multidimensional empathy. Always, all times, in all ways, I am, because life is an inseparable event where there is no island. Although there's water, everything is interconnected through the elements physical and the elements of consciousness and the elements of the sacred, the holy. And I bring this up of how we're held in the fabric of shared space. And we look out at life, and if we're not aware, we live in the denied filterization through pride, and in some cases of denial, and in some other cases the filter of narcissism, in which we look through these lenses and we denigrate life through the eye, the ear, the nose, the body, the tongue. We look to coerce life through the eye, the body, the nose, and the tongue. We look to violate life through the eye, the body, the nose, and the tongue, and the hand. Or we can bring out the best in ourselves and others by looking through the refractions of hope, of love, of compassion, of empathy. And although death and the prognosis of terminal existence highly accentuates the individual, and you now have license in a way to be fully narcissistic in your life. You can just be you on your terms now that you're dying. But in a way, it's not that at all. It's the beauty of shared space. When I had my goddess angel hospice nurses and friend come over the other day, And we sat and communed. Truly, it's a communion to talk about your death, the quality of your transitioning. I think many of you know I'm officially terminal now, according to the American Hospice Association here in Hawaii. A very rigorous psychological and medical set of examinations to state the obvious to every living form on the planet that ever was in the universe. You are innately terminal. Get the joke of that. And yet it gets confirmed back to you. Well, if you were lapsing in your forgetfulness of reality, I want to remind you, everyone is in hospice. And it's not morbid, okay, let's give them drugs to transition to the next birth gracefully. It's like the heavenly messenger of like, wow, you know, the biologist, the environmentalist, Guy McPherson, who's talked about catastrophic climate collapse and mass human extinction. For some years, he uses the phrases, we're all in hospice. The planet is in hospice. You're in hospice. I'm in double hospice. Maybe you're in double hospice as well. We've got the rank of sergeant in hospice rather than just privates. But we're all in hospice, and it's like, whoa, throw off the shackles, just like when I was 15 to 18 doing LSD on a regular basis and moving my body to the psychedelic sounds of the great musicians at that time. I was able to shake off the armament of the capitalistic Western East Coast, Washington, D.C., militarization of my own biology and psychic space. I began to just shed these lizard skins of artifice. You know what I'm saying? So in a way, recognizing that we're in hospice and in an interrelated shared mutuality, it's like, whoa, we get to dance in our own burning woman, burning man, existential, naked, reverential, erotic Ubuntu together. There's no need to perform in order to belong, because soon, have you signed off on the various papers of what one can do with your body after it no longer moves? Once it's cremated, who will get your remains and ashes? It's like, really, okay, go ahead. What's the lesson in that? Live in high pixelation and the quality of consciousness by bringing the goddess of life into the heart of the matter, having grace under pressure, and not waiting to see yourself as cremated. Like keeping high priority, death present. No. The heavenly messengers of intimacy. I think if there's ever a time of wanting to kind of infiltrate whatever future there is out here in front of me with high fidelity, transcendent experiences of intimacy. Just call it the ongoing flashback of meditation meets LSD meets, Allen Ginsberg, that meets Rumi, that meets Nibbana. That high fidelity intimacy, coming back to the word Sangha. I am who I am based upon these friendships and these intimate others, strangers that have become angels. And you're anointed because you're in community, in communion with that community, and you're held as a doula of birth and death simultaneously in the artistry of your own choices of what's priority. At the same time, become the best that you can with each person you meet. Empower Sangha to new levels, because in the absence of that, we have war, we have totalitarianism, we have slave states. The absence of Sangha is dictatorship, is barbarity, is cruelty. And so investing in this shared fabric of consciousness meets life. Let me end for today. Just a few phrases that keep playing through my heart through this process. And I encourage you, should any of this be valuable to you, to make your own lists. Take freely, use what you need to, but make your own lists to anoint and to elevate here in this pandemic a non-fear-based response on one level, and equally taking the heaven into the present, into the future, and seeing, okay, what's the difference between old age, disease, and death? Rebirthing, beautification of consciousness, bringing the God into shared space, saying the unexpected, doing things that are intrinsically unpopular, radicalizing your voice in ways that sensitize your regard for purity, and listening from the entirety of your heart and mind and body. We fall in love with qualities of consciousness conditioned by eye and ear contact. I wonder sometimes, what would it be like to fall in love without being able to hear or to see? The braille of being as important as our eyes and our ears, the quality of this field that we're in. Bringing God into the room, grace under pressure, the quality of consciousness, quality over longevity, process over projection. How easy it is to deal with the projection of death, the projection of suffering, the projection of separation. That's a very different event than the event itself, right? That projection block in consciousness that is the perpetual director of a particular style of relating to it. And you have a heavenly messenger there, or a low dose, or a medium dose, or a high dose, or an insight through meditation or life, or intimacy, or touching, or the beach, or God. And all of a sudden, the projection relaxes, and you go, wow, wow, process. Taking it higher. Intimate depth over acceptable continuity. Intimate depth over acceptable continuity. Another phrase that comes to my mind a lot, simply put, is my life is larger than death. Walk into that existential marquee with everything that takes you along your own stairway to, no cliche intended, to heaven. Don't wait for death to take you. Take the death out of that walk. So, from my heart to yours, don't forget to gift yourself with the best of yourself. Embody that unique, gorgeous, utterly wild style that's truly you. There's nothing to hold back at this point. The madness of madness can be normalized. Unleash, expand. If you need to contract, do it with the most elegant sensitivity of its naturalness. Inspire your artistry, your own unique aesthetic. Give it away. What is there to hold back? What can you keep? The folly of attachment, the poignancy of grasping. Oh, how easy it is for me to woe in being alone, the tone of alone. Oh, sad is me. There's something breathtaking in the naturalness of that expanding aloneness that includes and includes and includes. Remember, only by oneself, it's said by the Buddha, can one be defiled. Only by oneself can one be freed. And let us remember the timeless teachings of the political prisoners in my beloved country of planet Earth and Burma. There is a freedom that only you can give yourself. There is only a freedom that you can give yourself. Bring that God into the room. Anoint that mind stream with the heightened qualities of consciousness. Beautify one's own mind and body. Hold nothing back. Ask yourself what really matters. Live your best day today, right? These are no longer cliches unless you make them. So from my heart to yours, thank you for moving along this very simple sharing. I'm deeply grateful to those of you who are in my life that stay close, that write, that text, that donate, that give, that ask, that send prayers and metta. I don't want to give the appearance here that there's anything easy. It's quite complicated. And I refuse, as long as I have courage, to give life to that complication and to keep dissolving. And as I have learned, and I'm learning more, keep pushing the sky away. Keep feeling into your depth of beauty. And if it was only today, how would we live? So from my heart to yours, God willing, see you tomorrow for Lesson in the Making, Part 4 of Deadman Walking. Freedom Never Dies, 11 life lessons in facing death. And hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you.